Is this a little bit better? Did you know that 1 in 4 Americans will become sick from a foodborne illness this year? And that last year 5,000 people in this country died from a foodborne illness? Today we're going to be talking about some of the things you can do to prevent foodborne illness and some of the common mistakes, many of which you've already seen, and what you can do to prevent it. The easiest way to prevent foodborne illness in your own home is to understand a little bit about where it most commonly comes from. There are certain foods that should make a little caution light go on in your head. Not because they are dangerous in and of themselves, but if mishandled, they can be a problem. And the most obvious ones, of course, are the proteins. You've all smelled food that has gone bad. Food that has gone bad is not good to eat, by definition. Whether it's moldy or smelly, inspection is a real important part of the purchase process. Now, chicken has had, in the past, a reputation as something that needs to be thoroughly cooked. You've all been told this. The reason is that sometimes, very seldom, but sometimes, chicken itself can be contaminated with a bacterium called Salmonella. And that also applies to eggs. Both of those are killed very easily by simply cooking the food to 165 degrees. Ground beef as well is something that should be thoroughly cooked to 165 degrees again. And most of the problems that you've heard of that have come from eating ground beef have come from eating undercooked ground beef, and have also come from cross-contamination, where someone will touch the raw beef and then the beef will get cooked thoroughly, and they'll touch something else after they've touched raw ground beef, like lettuce, and they will get sick from eating the lettuce. Other things that you might not think about are things like cantaloupe. Cantaloupe grows in the ground. The ground is dirty and often has a few diseases that can cause foodborne illness. And so if you buy a whole cantaloupe, before you cut it, you want to wash it thoroughly. If you don't, what happens is that the dirt on the outside is taken by the knife as you cut through it to the inside and goes across the whole cut surface of the flesh of the melon. This also can happen in a grocery store. If you're going to buy cut melons, make sure you understand how your particular grocery takes care to clean its melons. And that applies to any cut vegetable too. Another very obvious thing to look for is dented cans. A dented can is a can you don't want to buy. These dents can cause cracks. The cracks can admit contamination. If the can is not dented but is bowed out at the top, that's even more dangerous. That is a possible sign of botulism, because botulism can grow in a completely closed container if the process has been contaminated at some point. So if the can is misshapen, don't buy it. Other things that you can move along to and look at are eggs. Eggs are another thing that need to be thoroughly cooked. Once again, the problems with eggs are statistically insignificant. They don't happen very much, but if a raw egg makes you sick, you don't want to be the one. And so if you're going to make things like hollandaise sauce or mayonnaise at home, use pasteurized eggs. Pasteurization for dairy products is something that has saved lots and lots of lives in the century since it started being used. Unpasteurized milk is very dangerous to use. Soft cheeses made from unpasteurized milk need to age 90 days before they are safe to eat. So just know that when you buy them, and you'll save yourself a lot of trouble. Here are 6 ways to fight foodborne illness. Illnesses caused by contaminated food. First, avoid foods from unsafe sources. Then inspect your food carefully at the time of purchase and before preparation. If something's growing on it, throw it out. Third, separate your food to avoid cross-contamination. Cook your meat, poultry, and eggs thoroughly. Clean your produce and your hands and your work surfaces thoroughly. Another real easy inspection to make is looking for the use-by date. This occurs on practically everything that can spoil in the grocery store. You'll even see it on some fresh squeezed orange juices. And it's right there at the top on this little dairy product, and it tells you when you can sell it by. Usually, you can use it for a couple days after the sell-by date, but it's better if you buy it a few days before and have it all used up by the sell-by date. Safest thing you can do. Wash your hands under warm running water with soap for the time it takes you to sing Happy Birthday to yourself twice. Make sure that you spread your hands so your fingers are stiff, and you put one hand on top of the other going down between your fingers, and then reverse it so the other hand is doing the same thing. Then pinch your thumb and your forefingers together in the shape of a little talking mouth, and then go into your palm with the tips of your fingers and thumbs so that the soap goes up under your fingernails. Do that with both hands, scrubbing back and forth in a circle, then come out and rinse your hands off and dry. Time to clean up. And this is one of the most important steps in preventing foodborne illness. When you're cleaning a work surface, particularly if it's a work surface that has had raw proteins on it, you want to make sure that everything on there is dead. So we're going to pretend that I've been cutting up chicken on this. And then what I have done is in this bottle I have mixed 1 teaspoon of bleach with 1 quart of water. And that, believe it or not, even as weak as that concentration seems, that is a sanitizing solution. Spray it on your surface, walk away. Come back in about 5 minutes, and then clean it up. You should do the scrubbing part first before you sanitize it. Get all the loose stuff off, because if you've got little bits of protein or something sticking on there and you spray it down with bleach, then what you'll have is nice sterile protein for the next airborne bacteria to feast on when they come by, and they'll say, oh, this is nice and clean, this is great. So make sure it's cleaned off before you do the sanitizing step. And the mantra in restaurants for cleaning stuff up is wash, then rinse, then sanitize. Doesn't apply so much to cutting boards unless they're going through the dishwasher. But anything like a pot or a pan or a dish has that step. In washing dishes at home, the sanitizing step is usually left out, and it's usually not really necessary. Only again with things that have come in contact with raw proteins. And so what you're going to do is you're going to set up an order for washing your dishes. Things that touch the mouth get washed first. So that means your flatware and your glasses. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out, if you haven't done dishes enough to know this, if you wash your glasses last, you have to wash them twice anyway because they come out all spotted with the stuff that's been floating around in your dishwasher. Then you move on to other things like the plates, and the greasy pots and frying pans come last. So that's the order that you'll do it in. If you're using a dishwasher, make sure that the stuff is scraped off there. You don't necessarily have to rinse your plates. Most modern dishwashers will do that for you, but you do need to have the food scraped off into the garbage can. I don't want the little floaties going around in my dishwasher, so I make sure that everything is nicely scraped out before I start washing the dishes. Now here's another problem. Probably the most common way that foodborne illness is spread. What we have here is lovely, fresh, raw green leafy spinach, and it's sitting under lovely, fresh, raw, pale, clammy chicken. And the problem is, if this chicken happens to have any bacterial contamination, and as a protein product, it's possible that it might, it has now spread to something that is likely going to be served and eaten raw. And this can happen in a variety of ways. It can happen from a cutting board. Here I am. I'm chopping things, including the chicken, on this cutting board. I get done, I put it in a pan, and the next thing that comes over that space in the unclean cutting board is spinach. And believe me, just wiping the cutting board down with a damp cloth won't do it. After you're cutting some kind of meat or fish or beef, you need to wash rinse, and sanitize the cutting board so that it is as bacteria-free as possible. So that's one method. Another method would be simply, if I cut this, put it on a nice clean cutting board, washed, rinsed, and sanitized, and then using the same knife, chopped up the spinach. So the cross-contamination comes through the agency of the knife. A third and extremely common way would be, let's pretend there's a refrigerator here, pardon my elbows. Here is the chicken. It is a frozen chicken. It is now thawing. There is the hydrator with the spinach in it. Drip, 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 drip. It goes down on top of the hydrator. It goes through the cracks and it drips onto the spinach and you don't even know. It's happening in your refrigerator now. To use cooking and chilling to your advantage, when cooking, have a temperature chart handy to tell you the temperature at which it is safe to serve foods, especially meat-based products. Ensure your food is properly cooked by measuring the internal temperature with a thermometer. For example, properly cooked ground beef has an internal temperature of at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And beware of microwaving meats. The temperature may lie. Because microwave energy transfers from side to side and around the meat, your cooking temperature needs to be higher than it would otherwise, because it will even out from side to side. For chilling, refrigerate prepared foods within 2 hours. Set your refrigerator at 40 degrees or below and your freezer at 0. Divide food into small containers to speed cooling. Marinate and thaw your food in the refrigerator. Leave enough space in the refrigerator for air to circulate and keep the food cool. Use a cooler or an ice pack for portable cooling. Keep track of how long things spend in the fridge. A cold temperature retards bacterial and mold growth, but we've all seen that it does not stop it. Another thing that a lot of people have trouble cooling down is hot liquids, things like soups and sauces. And the thing to remember is the shallower the container you pour it into, the quicker it's going to cool down. You pour it into a big bucket like that, tall and narrow, and it's not going to cool down really quickly. But if you pour it into something like this, and don't let it get very deep, and rather than filling it all the way up to the top, do the same with another container and the same with another container, it's going to get down out of the danger zone to a point where it can be refrigerated very quickly. And an even quicker way to do this, if you have an ice machine or access to a whole lot of ice, is to take a larger container and put some ice in it and then set this pan right on top of it. Works out just beautifully. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this aside, let it get down to about 70 degrees, which shouldn't take all that long, then put it in a smaller container, cover it, and put it in the refrigerator to store. Now, I'm going to get something out of the refrigerator right now that has been thawing in here for a couple of days. And the reason that it has been thawing in here for a couple of days is that when you take poultry out of the freezer and you just stick it at room temperature, what happens is the outer part of the chicken thaws out and warms up while the inside is still frozen. And so while you think that the whole thing isn't ready to cook because you're seeing the ice crystals down on the inside of the cavity of a whole chicken, microbial activity has already begun at the area of the skin. And it can turn and contaminate the thing from the skin in while the farthest part inside is completely frozen. So those are the 4 basic principles. Clean, separate, cook, chill. And thanks for watching.